feel good, we feel important. And hopefully we'll make it worth your while. But in the way. So maybe that is a question. Did this and voting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to present the I'm sure some of these slides for you guys too. So let me show of hands first of all. How many of you have already written? How many of you have something else? Oh, and you all know we're in the writing class. I will also try to help out a little bit by throwing in. We just started doing some animation learning, so I worked on the Dota Dragon's Blood on another Netflix animation. So I'll try to throw in a few nuggets. You know. Okay. So then the thing is important too, because how many of you are also artists? Okay. So this is why we have brilliant. So, yeah. Yeah, do you want to take it?
Yeah, I've been primarily with Archie Comics. I've been at Archie now for 5 years, and I write and draw pretty much every character you've seen at this point. And I continue to write and draw at Archie, and I also have a self-published called Die Kitty Die. It started and then I published through Chapter House.
And to my right is Phillip K. Johnson, who we've known. And he's done some brilliant work all over the place.
I'm Phillip K. Johnson. Currently, I'm running the ongoing series for Action Comics, Marvel. For the Superman main title, Last God, mine is recently released the collection. At Boom Studios, did a lot of stuff over there. Last Time of America, Step Flasher, etc. Yeah, I think my first book was Last Time of America. Web comics I did before that. I was going to, and it was great. There's a whole lot of us regarding her hustle and doing her activity, savage for regarding stay relevant. So thanks so much for having me.
So that's a whole other class on hustling. We're not going to cover as much of that today, but come down. We will sort of give you the idea of what else you need to use to, break in. Let's see. First of all, how many of you also? Let's try to make this a little interactive as well. How many of you are familiar with a comic script and what it actually looks like? Okay, very good. Better than I expected. Okay. How many of you know who the script is for? Who reads the script? Anybody? Right, the artist. For me or they, this is great. This is not for what you're doing is making a blueprint for the artist and the art team, and then also maybe the editor. So that actually changes everything. Let's see.
Yeah. I probably there's like the two kind of scripts. There's the type style script and there's the storyboard style script.
Yeah, I wish you'd talk a little bit about your.
Well, my scripts are done storyboard style because I'm an artist, so sketched out way. And when I receive the script, I'm fine with either way. the storyboard version gives you, I kind of prefer that a little bit. But, yeah, as far as my process goes, I don't know what exactly how to describe it. I just, uh, I got into writing a few years after I started working at Archie because, you know, when you're an artist, you're just kind of waiting on scripts, and they started telling you, why don't you just start writing your own stories, and you draw them. So you actually get a lot of control, which is good. So really a good element to have when you're writing and drawing. So, my process really, I was just kind of give you the day. I have to write like when I first get up in the morning. Like my mind is so foggy and messed up by the end of the day that usually I get up really early and I just when I do all my writing early. And then I just draw throughout the day, throughout the night. Then if my mind is foggy, I might actually be great at processing.
I was really keen to hear about it. Interesting to hear the dance process. He was talking about scripting storyboard style. But like early on, I book that my talk to artists about it. And it's been a great idea about storyboard stuff again to draw, but Dan, it was sense like writer. I'm not sure it makes total sense for your perspective. As I'm not a capable, I would not be giving them storyboards. Yeah, I'm going to jump into what Amy said. It's for the artists, obviously, and not for the leaders. So when I jumped onto Superman and Action Comics, Brian Bendis title purpose, and read one of his scripts. He's right with titles. One of my favorite writers. But it was a really well done story. In there, it said he was writing, he was telling the artists the story so that they can tell the story. Not that well. I don't know that in my writing. So I'm trying to be too precious with the panel descriptions and everything. It's all about how you get down. But before I worked with artists, I asked them what how they like to work, like how much direction they prefer. Because some people will prefer a lot of direction. They want everything laid out. It's like, tell them what to do, put everything on the page, and won't get done. Other people will want more control. And for zooming over what Marvel's talking script means. So it's funny because Marvel's not typically doing that way anymore, but it refers to plot style scripts where instead of panel one, full description, dialogue, two, full description, dialogue. Instead of all that, like very meticulous, it's more almost like paragraph forms where you kind of describe what's on the page, then the artist will express it, and then you get dialogue. I usually don't like to work that way because I find that a lot of details kind of come out in the wash, but I do make sure the artist has a lot of feedback, a lot of control, so that basically I'll write everything in detail with the understanding that they are free to basically change whatever. We're free to discuss it. So if I do something stupid, I'm not thinking about the art as much as I should. What years actually trying to work out better in your will improve. So I'll write a lot of detail on my scripts with the understanding that I want them to collaborate with me. I need the process. So.
A few slides for you guys, just to make it more efficient. Also, I do teach writing at the school, the art school. So academic exercise for which you get for free, and those students pay, on it. As Phil was saying, first of all, for all of you, if you don't know already, comics is a collaboration. Unless you are also drawing your own story, think about it as teamwork. Very few artists, and if any of you already work in a team environment, I think it's most of you do. The worst thing to do, worst demotivating thing to do is just kind of do the top down, like my way or the highway, right? That is very demotivating, especially when you want to get the best of your work. I want to also talk a little bit about the fact here, when we're talking about artists, important to know how to actually make the comic. The process is actually, and for a lot of us, we work on mainstream comics, but even indie comics, you're really oftentimes dealing with multiple people, including the colors and the letters. So when you're composing your script, remember, set instructions for everybody. So you need to also call out some things. When the letterer needs to know something, put a little note, letterer note, okay? Sound effects, right? Here's sound effects, thinking about, and I frequently couch it in. I don't like this, but if I'm working with, as we frequently are, we're working with very experienced people. I will say, well, this is what I'm thinking, but if you have a better idea, go for it. Especially for colors. So, not to call out anybody, but like I said, I teach a lot of writing classes at the Cuba school, so I look at a lot of beginning scripts. And a lot of times the writer will say something like, so the colors should be a gradation of blue, and here's some Pantone color, and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, we do the colors, it's okay to just tell the colors, establish mood. You want it just to be a moody twilight, a vivid blue. You don't need to say cerulean blue or anything like that. Okay? And you also don't need to go into the paragraphs. People just how do we establish the mood? How do we establish, and maybe throw out some colors. But you don't need to get that specific. Let's see. We talked briefly about full script versus Marvel method. A very important question. For the people here, is your interest really to write, like, to be up here and to write for Marvel and DC? How many of you are sort of thinking that or possibly thinking that? Anybody? Okay. So for the rest of you are thinking, I just want to make my own comics, indie comics, yeah? Okay. So we won't spend too much time on this whole full script versus Marvel method, because if for the ones who want to be up here, you really have to do full script. And full script means all the detail, not the sort of paragraph. Okay, so for the people here who are thinking more, you're doing your own thing and maybe working with some of your friends, you can do it more collaborative. You don't have to spell it out as we do, as I'm supposed to be doing today. Full script due tomorrow. Yeah, which no problem, right? I'll just sit there and I'll just hammer it out. Don't do what we do. Thanks.
I'm still talking.
Yeah. But for your benefit though, I'm happy to show you what I'm working. Okay. And there's also a certain mentality when there's work for hire, you gotta get stuff in on time. And I'm actually working on creator own things as well, but those have deadlines. Deadlines are very important, I'm going to go through a little bit about actually my time, right? Here. You gotta keep me also honest in terms of where we are, because I want to get in a few questions. But my process has evolved a little. I started off doing what I call a Marvel method. Also a little bit about my background. This is also important because depending on where you're coming from, your comfort zone, especially if you're a prose writer, you're going to want to rely on your words. You think your words are going to carry through everything. Writing is different. The number one thing to remember is it is a visual style of writing. You're dealing with, there's a strategy to writing. You have to think in terms of real estate. Okay, you're thinking in terms of, is this 8 pages? Is it 16 pages? Is this 20 pages? Or maybe even 180 pages? It's not prose where you just keep going, because most of us will talk specifically. My default is to talk specifically more about. We will also talk a little bit about digital, which is a little different, but it's still the same. Digital, you have specific real estate. You have this Kindle format, Webtoon. Is anyone doing web comics? Digital comics? Yeah. Okay. So you have to know what you're writing for. If you're writing for a digital comic, no. Is it going to be a Webtoon style tablet? How does the reader go through? Now, if we are talking about print comics, and you all have read print comics, presumably, what is it? You're turning the page. You're turning the page. You're not doing a screen swipe. That changes how you experience the story. So knowing that informs how you're going to write. Okay. Right. Okay. So that's another one thing you're going through your script. Is real estate, visual, remember the one action per panel. That's why you can't open, close the door, cross room, sit down, blank cover. That's like already what 2 pages.
On that. I'm not as great as I would like to be as far as utilizing panel layouts. And honestly, I don't even find one because I don't want to micromanage others. They always better. Put together a well-constructed page. So I don't bother in front of trying to visualize each specific, unless there's something super obvious like or go in and somebody's tied up lying on the floor, just clearly very horizontal, but you can't have it almost vertical. If the visual person is something clearly horizontal, a wide shot, or if it's like if I'm thinking like Frank Miller, Dark Turns thing where Bruce is falling down, okay, series great, something like that would be obvious. But otherwise, I just kind of don't overcrowd the page. The key though is to visualize the page in static images. That's what we was talking about. And there's I don't know a chapter first window close the shield and the songs, whatever. That is probably too much for one image. I need to see what is happening in this image. Say, show cap busting through the window as one, right? But he's in the room already, hands on the shield, and the other dude's already disarmed and on the floor. Just think about what is that image going to look like in terms of static image. That's a huge mistake.
Dan, you have something to be.
Well, when you mentioned the overwriting thing, the other way you can overwrite is too much dialogue. The panel, and each person is saying so much stuff that there's no room for illustration anymore.
Yeah.
And then it drives the letter crazy too, because the letter has to like do all that work.
Yeah, that's why I meant
Yeah.
Yeah, so here's the other thing is remember the dialogue, the lettering, if any of you graphic designers, yeah, okay, so you know what I'm talking about. That is a visual element. Now you can use that to your advantage. That's a visual element. It helps track the eye. So you can use those word balloons to help you out. If you're thinking like a prose writer, and you read some comics, you know who the prose writers are, because there's massive blocks of text, okay? That's not telling the story. And anytime you remember that, it takes the reader out of the story. Last thing you want to do is take the reader out of the story. So those graphic elements, those words have to appear on the page in order for us to read. That if you're doing your job well, the magic occurs when you don't even remember that balloon is there. You're literally reading it in conjunction with the image. So always remember, when you're sort of orchestrating your page, what you're doing is essentially graphic design in your head. And I am very fortunate, I'm not a prose writer, I studied architecture. So I think visually already. That really helped me tremendously. I don't consider myself a writer, in fact. I think of myself really as a storyteller. And what you're doing is you're taking a page, down like Phillip said. Don't do too many panels. In fact, rule of thumb, I try to keep to 5 to 7. Anyway, I'll figure out a way to get you guys some of these slides. Don't tell the kids at school. But 5 to 7 panels is kind of a good place for you to be, especially if you've not done this before. I err on the side of minimalism. I tend to go 3 to 5. It largely depends on what's going on the page. Every panel has to tell part of the story. Nothing should be wasted. What we're talking about is the economy and minimalism telling the story. That's all you got. You don't have motion. You don't have sound. You have to apply all. The magic though is that the stuff that happens in between the panel. That's why readers get into comics, because you have imagination. You fill in the blanks, and that's where skill comes in terms of what we do as writers. And I know you're thinking, well, isn't all that the artist's, job? No, that's us. We as the writers are the ones that say, essentially, first page, splash. Full, one panel, they will, we don't draw it, but we need to give that blueprint to the artist. The artist may say, oh, well, actually, what about if I do an inset panel here too? Absolutely, but they need to start from somewhere. So that is our job. I feel like if I'm not doing that, if I do page 3 to 5 action sequence, I'm not doing my job. Unless the artist says, hey, I would prefer to do that. But, I'm paid to basically provide a script. I will break it down. Part of what we also do is, it comes with practice, is understanding how much space it takes to do something, to tell part of the story. Action requires a different amount of space than maybe a quiet moment, which may be just one beat, one panel. So that will also come with practice. I mean, and again, this is kind of the newbie thing is, if you're reading a first-time comic, the pacing may be off. When you're writing, maybe you're feeling that too. It's like, I can't get a sense of the timing. We control the time. More often than not, you'll find that the story gets rushed at the end. And we've all seen movies and TV shows like that, where like, what's going on? Suddenly they're wrapping up all that stuff. You will find yourself, unless you're incredibly gifted, also in that position. So your job is to smooth that out, okay? And this is what I spend most of the time with my students saying, don't rush into it. Don't just sit down and just kind of vomit out the words. Work out your structure first, and then start filling in your story. So that is what I've just told you is my approach. I always work on the ending first, beginning, ending, and then working in the middle. That's what I do.
So for me, okay, that's an interesting approach. I like to warm up that with applying. No, I actually start from. So I mean, if we're going from the very beginning, I'll take a very basic paragraph and kind of get what happens in the story, and then turn it into something a little prettier, something like more concise. I'll take a concise outline and turn it into page breakdowns, a version in which you see like on what page what things happen. And the reason I started doing that is because I stuff my scripts, so I want to make sure that I can read on the shoot. So like page 1, you see well, pages 2 and 3 is when this happens. Pages 4, 5, 6, and 7, chasing things or whatever. I can kind of do enough of these that I can tell roughly how long this scene or some of the events going to take on the page. And I'll break it down into like almost bullet points. And then I'll cut and paste those bullet points into an comic template that I have. And I avoid what Amy was talking about, where you tend to like rush towards the end or over stuff. I'm a meticulous outliner to avoid that. And I know not all writers have outlines, but for reasons, for comics specifically, I would encourage you to use an outline. You don't have to stick to it, but you should start from the outline. I know some people do like to just start right till the end, or break up into sections. But I find that if you outline, you can kind of avoid the pitfall of falling into over and over and over again, because you've got 28 pages of story for a 22-page script. So I encourage you to outline, and that will help you keep the pace, as it should be.
I think I do something similar, and again, outlining. I try to break it down. If I know it's a 20-page issue, which is standard for monthly comics, I'll literally just number 1, 2, 3, 4 to 20. And then I'll start breaking it down, okay, the beginning and the end. And the reason I focus on the end is, and I find this frequently for a lot of people, if you have to figure out the ending, where are you going to go? I don't feel like we have a story unless I know how it ends, and it can change. That's the important part. You're doing the outline, as Phil was saying, stuff will change because you'll start understanding your story, more importantly, your characters better. And at some point, your characters, that ending doesn't actually fit with characters. You gotta keep consistent. You gotta keep the logic. Dan, how do you go?
Well, speaking of the end, I always have the end. Because a lot of the stories I write are 5 to 6 page stories. That's the format of Archie. So you have to have that like a joke too. So that's the most important part. So that part is done first. And then that's followed. If it's a 20-page story, like it's a full length book, like you guys do, I sort of have to I kind of map out what I do every 5 pages. Because also when we do 5-page chapters, but even in an adventure kind of story, I have to know the end first. Just and then when I'm writing a synopsis, I'll get the editor's synopsis for different stories. And the synopsis basically, if you synopsis, the ending is more about the actual details of the story. That's definitely a more common thing with Archie stories.
So the analogy I tend to use is, again, the architectural analogy. It's like you are moving into 1-bedroom or a studio. It's not the time to get the baby grand piano and all that stuff. You can figure out how to fit all that in. You got to chuck the piano. If you're really dead set on doing that, then you got to organize the other stuff around that. So it frequently, and I'm sure you all have an idea or hopefully multiple ideas. Some ideas are just simply not suitable. As you'll find out when you get the invitation, or maybe you say, "Oh, I want to be part of this anthology," and it's 5 or 6 pages. Or 10. If you're doing something, especially action, you've already eaten up 3 to 4 pages on action. How do you do character development in that period of time? So always look for what is going to fit the amount of real estate you have. And if it's not going to fit, don't try to shoehorn it in by doing, 10 panels, and maybe it'll make it work. If that's wishful thinking.
I do when we're first getting into the laying the skeleton in place for the issue is once we've done what we're discussing here and kind of provide what the big sections are where the camp. I will kind of, unless it's a very unusual scene, most of the scenes will fit into the category of either dialogue driven or visual driven. And I mean, but just from a starting place, this is a scene in which the monologue for the conversation even really matters. I will kind of say that's in red, say in your script, and then the other sections where it's an action scene or it's very visual driven. That's so for the red scenes, I would not think about real estate at all. I mean, like how many pages I have, I'll just write the conversation if I'm writing a short story, a purpose story. I'll just write the conversation and make sure that part really sinks. And then when I do the blue scenes, the action scenes, the visual scenes, I'll write those without thinking about dialogue too much. And I'll just make sure what the core piece I want to see on the page. And then, of course, when I go through both of those, I think the red or blue, the blue or red, stronger. You have the visuals that make the dialogue for the scenes more compelling. Not just talking heads the whole time. And you kind of homogenize the whole thing, all visual driven, but also from a word count. I find that's a much more concise and streamlined way to approach to start. I mean, in the end, these are all very visual, words matter, but it's just a way to start.
A useful rule of thumb for your dialogue, 15 to 20 words per balloon, okay? Use it as a template. I don't mean to say lay down the law, but it will help you. Because when you're going above, that you're kind of doing an info dump perhaps. try to keep it to that size. I tend to underwrite, and I find in the learning class, by the way, you're going to go through multiple drafts. I have to beef up my diet because I tend to use it as a placeholder.
That's awesome.
Also because, like I said, I did not start off as a writer. So of course, words matter, but instruction really you're responsible for the user experience. Okay. And what you're also doing, and is this useful? Is this something that you guys, okay, is while we're talking about this, and this is also very important, right? Because we're laying down the foundation, we're putting up the beams, we're doing all these things. Just don't forget that it's all about the characters. If you have like a wonderful plot plan, but we don't care about your characters, what's the point? Just like you're all watching shows or doing whatever, and cool special effects, but we're not invested in the characters. That's the real truth. So that fundamentally, you always got to get back to who are my characters, and why do we care about these characters? And that I find sometimes the hardest part. Yeah, especially for these little anthologies and things, you want to do the cool ending, the Twilight Zone ending, and things like that. But you actually didn't really care about the character in the surprise ending. Where are we? Right? That's the major failure for us as writers. And the artists also play a role in this, right? Because they're designing a character as well. Unless it's already existing IP, we're already invested. I just did a Jughead horror story coming out in November. They just announced it yesterday, so we already, for the most part, know who Jughead is. So that part is taken care of. If you guys are writing your stories, you have the additional burden of why do we care? Who are these characters, right? So but you need to also think through that. It's super important. What am I missing?
Yeah, I mean, the character versus plot thing is super important. I just yet another mistake I've made, which I tend to think in terms of world building, world build, and sometimes I get so caught up in like it's really awesome my concept idea. But sometimes this big plotting Old Testament thing that doesn't have the characters that really want to dig into, and it has to be character driven. And character driven stories make it matter. And you have to show us who the characters are through like just detail, like little detail about who they are, about their appearance, about what they do, about the way they speak, and just make them feel real to them. Yeah, your story should always be. I'm not saying you can't world build and have these huge, awesome high concept ideas, but it should be built around characters and show us why it's going to matter, what's invested in their lives, and what's happening. So yeah, character first always.
Let me talk a little bit about Larry Hama, who I consider a mentor. He really helped me as I was getting started. Larry has written 50 issues of G.I. Joe. He's done Wolverine. He's done just about everything. And when you ask him what his process is, he just said, I just sit down and I just like roll out carpet. Oh, but again, I think that's different because he's been writing for decades and he's already got the idea. He lets the characters drive the story. He already knows these characters and he knows where they're going to go, kind of. So I think it's a little different. But you see, he's very character centric. It's like, what would Baroness do? Well, it's kind of like that's sort of his thing. And that's why I also think about your genre. If you are writing that murder mystery, you gotta have the ending, right? So I think that's also very specific to how you approach that process. I like to write mystery. My first book, Poison Ivy, that was really a murder mystery. That's why I had to work up the whole outline and figure out who done it, who dies, who done it. That's a little bit different than if I'm writing something else. Adventure game, for example, where there's some more exploratory things. But when you're doing murder mystery, you have to leave enough clues, and that takes a lot of stuff. We are going to run out of time, so I want to start answering some questions.
Yeah. So like when you're doing outline, after what you get your process, how much freedom do you give yourself to kind of take go off the outline in the middle of the script? You're like, something here to really do this, most quickly learn things. What do you do from that?
No, I mean, you should let this is all malleable. You should allow yourself that, if it's not working, it's not working. If something does not fit, I don't want to say kill it, but move it aside. Because sometimes it's your favorite scene that's holding things up and it doesn't make sense anymore now that we understand the characters. Remember, you're going to do multiple drafts. The most important thing though is to remember, finish your script. Okay. Don't just say, okay, because I have this outline, I'm just going to plow through it. It's no longer making sense. Give yourself some leeway to say, okay, let me rework it. Okay. But in the end, don't use that as an excuse to say, okay, now I'm stuck, writer's block, I'm going to quit, and I'm not going to get to it. I hope that's helpful. Yes, you have the back.
We have to like doing it. If you don't love it, you're going to learn how to do it more. But not, you have, it's tough because there are deadlines you have to meet, and a good motivator is you need to get paid. It's a great motivator to get working, get cracking. But perhaps natural too. You have to let yourself rest too, and take care of yourself too. You have to kind of balance it. Balance.
For me, I would encourage you to find yourself why you love it. And that work pretty much. That's right. I mean, I've got careers going, and that's one. Energy drinks. Yeah, don't drink, please. Not drink drinks. That. Where was I? I try to find stuff that I really admire. And some the other night somebody was asking about another panel about what some works and books like Change the Game for You. And some of those that I go back to perennially are some of these years that really showed me what to do. So I didn't read comics for years. Okay? Loved as a kid all the way through like early days of college. And then I just went all in on my career at the time, and didn't read comics until maybe about 10 years ago. I got back into the scene and was just blown away by how far we've come to what we're doing now, what's possible. And there was some amazing stuff before that too. There's some of what I was, in the middle of darkest Kentucky, no comic stores around. I had no idea about Future or From or anything. It was all just like Marvel, DC, what comics were. But now and then I was just, my mind was blown open with all these amazing things. So now I go back to things like my favorite thing is Monsters, Stage Ripper, the new English translation of Beowulf by Garcia and Dean. So many, I'm sorry, I don't think right now. So many things that matter to me that deeply that help us through. I try to find these things and just remind myself of what's possible, why I love it. Remind myself of, this is what I want to do. These are what I think.
Yeah, I think you got to figure out your motivation. In a lot of ways, it's also the reason I write so many really different things is the challenge. Can I write this particular genre? Can I write this character? Some characters are more difficult than others, kind of licensed characters, right? So that motivates me. It's like, can I write a good kids comic? I have certain things like I need to work on my dialogue. I need to work on, when you're doing ensemble, like you're doing a team book, Betty and Veronica needs Amarillo and Red Sonia, right? I do that because I'm like, that's a challenge. Why are they even in the same room? That's ridiculous, right? Can I make a good story out of it and make sure each character still has agency? That's what keeps me motivated. At a certain point, sometimes you're like, I can't do it. But it is the biggest thrill to actually, be able to do it, and people say you actually made it work. So the second part of that question, though, is also figure out your support systems. It could be your family. Generally speaking, it's not great. Your parents will always either, actually, my parents didn't even read my comments, but, find people who are not just saying, oh, that's really great, but find your tribe of people who are going to help you out. Give you critical feedback that you respect. People will help you out. If you have kids, I basically did all this, kids crawling all over me. You got to figure out how can we do all these things, and juggle all this stuff and make it work. And it's very easy to burn out if you don't. I'm lucky that my mom lives nearby, so I dump the kids off because I got a deadline. That helps a lot. So work all that stuff out. Caffeine helps a great deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of support, as for editors, working with editors, how is that you go asking your editor for support, and what makes a good editor for you?
From the back question is how, what makes a good editor, basically. I would say, so whenever I get a note from an editor, like, this is something that's not working yet, or this is something that we need to address, something you get, we're not getting to the place where we get these characters yet. Those kinds of notes are almost always right. But when they try to tell us, do this instead, those notes are typically wrong. I don't like when an editor says, here's, what if they said something like this instead, or what if, sometimes, now I do sometimes take those ideas, those suggestions, but very often they're like, I feel like we can do better than this. But whenever they say something like, I don't feel like this is earned yet, like that kind of thing, those notes are almost always great. So basically, those are the best notes from the editor. We're here to kind of be a sounding board and to help us get what we're trying to get to, but not be our puppet master. They're trying to write through us. That's the worst. Get micromanaged. Worst.
Yeah, a good editor should have, depending on whether we're talking books or comics, a good editor needs to have a lot of skills, but it's people skills too. You're supposed to get the best out of their creators. And frequently, the best is not saying do it my way, but also, and this is true for animation and TV writing, is the story rules over everything. We're trying to make the best story possible when we get there. And my kids are actually great because a lot of editors sometimes, it's a personal opinion or whatever, but kids who if they don't get the story, I know they're not going to lie about it. My mom reads a story, but she doesn't. She's going to say, oh, it's really good. That doesn't help. But my kids are like, yeah, I really understand what happened. That's a very important thing. So that's part. So a whole other thing talking about editors, but it's not just about liking your editor, it's having respect, mutual respect. We're running out of time. Let's try to get 2 more questions in. Let's be there.
So you said that you usually come up with the ending and then you figure out the beginning. What are some things that help you fill in the in between?
It is that when you figure out a goal, it's the path. Think of it as a path. It's the best way to go. So that in between, that's where you start getting depressed and at a certain point you're like, why am I even doing this? That's a challenge. Okay. But it is that journey that makes it great for everybody. As I'm writing and I know what the challenge is, that's it. Here at a time, but let's do this. Where are you sitting? We're going through together.
I am in Artist Alley, table D01. And you can find me in some other place.
I'm an A05. He's the best writer, fifth best writer in the room. I think that's how it works.
I am actually right behind Dan, so that makes it really easy. And since we're all working on deadlines, you can ask her questions. Give us a reason to procrastinate. Thanks so much. I'm sorry. We really didn't have enough time. This is really a 2-hour. So some resources. First of all, follow us all on the social media. I'll come down to my table. I'll give you all of that because I frequently will put out stuff. Downloading things that we write about, you know, with a script or something. And
I mean, a couple of my weeks ago, more questions, so I talked more about unique stuff. I know it's the dating process that we get started on, so love changing topics.
the most important thing is finish your script, okay? Finish your script. You finish your script, you'll start another. But don't doodle on your script forever and ever. Get it done. You can always go back. That's all I'm saying.
Embrace the draft, first draft, and always provide something that's not good. You can't provide much.
Thank you for telling.